Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Paul's Cinema Picks of the Week. I am your host, Paul Westbrook, Brantford's film enthusiast. Today we're going to be talking about, this is part 2 by the way, of the 100th episode that we did. The first one last week we did the talk on the early cinema classics, that means the early era of film, up to the talking era. Now we're going to be going into the golden age of film, which is the official title of this video here. So let's get started. When we last left off, it was 1927, and we had the movie The Jazz Singer with Al Jolson. We were talking about how that started the advent of the talking era, and it went into the 30s, because the 30s were like the late silent period, because there were still like a couple of silent films, like Charlie Chaplin did City Lights in 1931, and then in 1935 things started shifting a little bit and changing into some of the later talking films. And by the late 1930s, around 1939, there came 2 classic films that overnight were sensations. Well, one was. The first one here we're going to look at, and see if my sister can get this here, it's the 1939 classic, The Wizard of Oz. It's the one with Judy Garland, Ray Bolger, Burt Lahr, and Jack Haley Sr. as the Tin Man. Burt Lahr was the Cowardly Lion, and Ray Bolger was the Scarecrow, and the late Judy Garland, well, in fact they're all late because most of them are all passed away now, Judy Garland played the part of Dorothy. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't know. Today, Wizard of Oz is deemed an enduring classic, but at the time it was released, it was considered a box office disaster. In fact, it was a bomb when it came to theaters at the time in 1939, because nobody really understood it. It's a lot like what Star Wars was like when it first came. People didn't really understand it, or the producers didn't really know what it was about. So a movie like that today is a classic, was considered a bomb at the time. But in the advent of television in the 1950s, when, 1949, Wizard of Oz had a re-release, a reissue, which was shown in theaters again, and did somewhat better than it did in its first run. And then in 1957, I believe it was, I'm not really sure, 54, 57, Wizard of Oz was shown on TV for the first time, and that's where it found its initial audience. That's where the movie actually became the classic that it is today. So ever since then, Wizard of Oz today is one of the American movie classics. It's on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies list as one of the top American films of all time. But yeah, a lot of people did not know that this movie at the time was considered a bomb. So, in hopes that in 30 years, certain movies today that are considered a bomb will one day become classics. So yes, Wizard of Oz, 1939. And the same year as Wizard of Oz was being played was another movie, and this one here, David O. Selznick production of Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind, which was a classic from the minute that it showed up in theaters. In fact, on the box here, you're getting this pretty good?
Yep.
It says the winner of 10 Academy Awards, including the Best Picture of 1939, and had an amazing cast. And this DVD set here that I have, they have 4 discs, which is actually very rare, because most of the types of films that you get now will have like 2 or 3 discs. Like you get one with the movie, and you get one with the extras, and maybe some little background on the film. This one here, disc 1 and 2, is the film, because the film was 238 minutes long, and you get the film, and then on disc 3, which is after disc 2, you get the documentary The Making of a Legend, Gone with the Wind, and Restoring a Legend, chronicles of the film's video restoration process, because a lot of films that were made in the 30s, you know, by the time that they came, like the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, when they were reissued, they were played so much on TV that the color tended to saturate, and through a computer-generated processing that they use now, you can restore classic films to the original brilliance. You get 5.1 surround sound, whereas you might not have got it at the time. And then you get 1939, 61, Atlanta Preview, Premiere Newsreels. You get the prologue, foreign language version sample scenes, historical short subjects, the Old South, and you get, of course, the classic trailer gallery that you would get in a lot of the films. And disc 4, which I thought was interesting, it's about the cast, like Clark Gable, Olivia de Havilland, Leslie Howard, Vivian Leigh, Butterfly McQueen, Hattie McDaniel, and most of the players that played in this film. You get 2 profile documentaries, Gable, The King Remembered, and Vivian Leigh, Scarlet and Beyond. So you get on the 2 principal leads of the film. And you get supporting players as well, like where they talk about the extra players that were in the movie. And this movie is certainly an endearing classic. It's been played a lot of times. It's really hard to get Gone with the Wind today, because there are a lot of groups that actually want to ban this movie because it has racial tones in it. Very similar to the one movie I talked about in the first episode about Birth of a Nation. You have, again, the racial undertones of the movie. Some of the words that are used are not considered politically correct by today's standards, which is sad because it's denying a lot of future generations the chance to really see these films. And I feel I'm an exponent of people. I'm the type of person that wants to see these type of movies for future generations, and I definitely feel that a generation is being robbed of a chance to really appreciate good cinema like this. And Gone with the Wind is one of the American films that I believe should be seen. Now we come to the next film here. It's 1942's epic film by Orson Welles. It was called Citizen Kane. And Citizen Kane is about the life of a newspaperman, Charles Foster Kane, from his childhood, more or less to his death. And this film has its own controversy in the fact that at the time, I need to take a drink for a second, my throat's getting dry, but this film here is based on the life of a very well-known and powerful newspaper tycoon, William Randolph Hearst. And in fact, Hearst himself didn't like the movie because he thought it was painting an unflattering portrait of how he led his life and a lot of the politics that go into running an American newspaper. And in fact, he wanted every negative of this movie banned. He wanted Orson Welles basically thrown out of Hollywood. He petitioned every theater that was going to see Citizen Kane into not seeing the movie and not being able to see it, and by pulling their license and stuff so they wouldn't be able to see this film. But today it endures, like I've said about all the films, as an enduring classic, and because of the fact that the way Orson Welles portrayed Kane, and by the way that a lot of the actors, the plot, the story just flowed around really good, and it was just, and they say it can justifiably be called the greatest picture of all time, countless classic moments. So you got plenty of moments in the movie that make it an enduring classic, and it's one that absolutely should be seen. Okay, Okay, next we have another classic film that my friend Gino, who's here by the way, likes this movie called Spartacus. And it was and again, it's a winner of 4 Academy Awards, presented uncut and fully restored on this VHS copy here, and starred Kirk Douglas as the title role of Spartacus, who is a soldier who, and they're enslaved by General Cassius, and it's how he has to face his convictions, and it shows the power of pure Rome. It shows the great cinematography that makes a film like this, and Kubrick was famous for doing films such of this nature. And Spartacus, I remember seeing this movie once late night, and again, it's over about 3 hours long, so you have to be patient, and it's one of those movies that you get a lot of great action scenes, like mostly Romans battling and Roman battles and stuff, like the armies, but it takes, being that it's a 3.5 hour epic, you have to be patient to really enjoy a movie like this. It's certainly one of the classics, as I said about most of the other films here, and I know a lot of people that have seen Spartacus really enjoy it. And it was different than the later Stanley Kubrick movies that I'm going to be talking about in just a short bit, because it had nothing to do with like the battles or anything, but I don't give any spoilers, so just more or less it's different in the fact of the genre. This is more the action, the war genre, and then the other one will be of another genre.
Before you start the next one, do you want to move your bags and Daddy?
Yep. Okay, so now next. Dick Van Dyke, Sally Ann Howe's Lionel Jeffries, and a fantasy film which is a musical, and everybody will probably know it when they see it. It was Chitty, Chitty, Bang, Bang. Okay, now, where we were talking about the movie Chitty, Chitty, Bang, Bang. Yes, have you seen this movie before? Has anybody seen this one? It's a classic. With Dick Van Dyke, Sally Ann Howe, Lionel Jeffries, Robert Helpman, who played probably the most memorable role in the film, the child catcher. And Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is about an inventor and his kids. They go to a beach and with the lady that's with them, and he starts telling them a story about a car which flies named Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And what happens is the story goes into this mythical land of Bulgaria, where which is ruled by an infamous baron named Baron Bombers, and he takes the car, and then the child catcher, he's hired to kidnap the kids. So because there's no kids allowed in this area to talk about anything that's going on, and so he gets rid of the kids, and then of course it's up to the inventor and his girlfriend to rescue them. And it's one of the great fantasy films of all time. It was actually made by Albert Broccoli, who you might know as the one who produced and directed a lot of the James Bond pictures and stuff. So it's very similar in that area. So yeah, and this DVD you have hours of extras. You get like the making of the movie. You get interactive games, song demos, sing-along featurettes, even a coloring page, and a collectible storybook, which really adds to the fun of the show. You don't get that in a lot of the VHS ones and DVD copies, but in this one, it being a special edition, you'll get a lot of the stuff that talks about Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It's certainly one of the most memorable movies that I've seen in my time, and was probably the first movie musical that I've seen just after Wizard of Oz. But at the same time, the star is the car itself, and there's a featurette even on the car. So this is one I would also recommend anybody to see. And there's no political correctness in it. It's, as far as I know, it's a film that's okay for the children to watch. So I would suggest seeing it. And last but not least, Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. I just got this on Blu-ray recently, and it's a classic science fiction film which came out in '68. And it also is like one of the classics. It's not like Star Wars was. Not like Star Wars was in its time, but it's classic in its own way. And it's more or less you see the fall of man, or the beginnings of man at the start, and then it goes into the expedition into the unknown by the pilot David and his group. It's like space exploration, and then he explores an area that is far beyond human reasoning, and it becomes, and then eventually turns into the something that he becomes a new life form, more or less. That's the best way I could probably interpret it. Stanley Kubrick's 2001, but it's one of those films that many people might have a lot of patience to see it, but at the same time, given the science fiction visuals, it's a film that you wouldn't want to miss. You want to see it, at least see it once, see what you think of it, and then you go from there, and then it's open to your own interpretation. And here in the special features, you have Channel 4 documentary, The Making of a Myth, 4 insightful featurettes on the metaphors that are explored in the film, 2001 FX early conceptual artwork, a look at Stanley Kubrick himself, and audio-only bonus, so you get to hear the music part, and then, of course, the actual trailer, and the Kubrick interview from 1966. So, that's pretty much into the advent of the talking, more or less into the classic genre, I like to call it, the classic film genres of the time. And then the next one, next week, we'll be discussing the modern era. So that's the films of today. So you can hear a little bit about computer, CGI, and all that stuff. But for now, this is Paul Westbrook, reminding you to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment just below the video, please, so that we can hear your thoughts. And take care. And folks, I'll be seeing you at the movies.